So welcome to today's webinar on improving and diversifying the teacher pipeline. Thank you again for joining us. We're happy to share REL Midwest research study along with insights from the state education leaders and teacher preparation program leaders during today's event. The American Institutes for Research allows for the recording of audio, visuals, participants, and other information sent, verbalized, or utilized during business-related meetings. By joining a meeting, you automatically consent to such recordings. Any participant who prefers to participate via audio only should disable their video camera so only their audio will be captured. Video and/or audio recordings of any AIR session shall not be transmitted to an external third party without permission of AIR. Closed captioning is provided for today's webinar. To access the closed captions, please click on the CC button or the closed caption button on your toolbar, and the captions will appear in the bottom of the screen. Today's event will describe the findings of REL Midwest's recent study on the teacher pipeline in Indiana. We'll pause for questions about the study, and then we'll share reflections from the state education and teacher prep program practitioners. We have presenters from the Indiana Department of Education and the Michigan Department of Education to share the state perspective. To share insights from the teacher prep program leaders, we have presenters from Purdue University and Indiana University Kokomo. So I'll introduce our presenters and give a quick overview of REL Midwest. So let me begin by introducing our presenters today. We have Dr. Yen-Mei Wan and Max Pardue from REL Midwest, and Scott Bogan and Rebecca Estes from the Indiana Department of Education. We also have Dr. Sarah Levan from the Michigan Department of Education, Dr. Catherine Oberchain from Purdue University, and Dr. Leah Nellis from Indiana University Kokomo. And to wrap it up, I'm Billy Day from REL Midwest. Now a little about REL Midwest. REL stands for Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest, and it is part of a network of 10 regional educational laboratories funded by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences. REL Midwest serves 7 states: Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. To address the priorities and interests of these states, REL Midwest supports 5 research alliances and a networked improvement community, as well as other collaborations. The work of this partnership is developed in consultation with state education agency and district staff to address priority education issues in the region. The REL Midwest Alliance to Improve Teacher Preparation supports teacher development in the Midwest. Our work is primarily based in Michigan, but we also conduct research and provide training around the Midwest, including our Indiana Teacher Pipeline Study. We partner with leaders from state K-12 education agencies, state higher education agencies, teacher preparation programs, and school districts. So now I'm going to turn it over to my REL Midwest colleagues to share our recent teacher pipeline study. Take it away, Yen-Mei.
Thanks, Billy. Hi, everybody. My name is Yen-Mei Wan, and I'm a senior researcher at AIR. I'm the principal investigator for this study on Indiana's teacher pipeline. Today, I'm going to provide a brief overview of the study, and then I'll pass it on to my colleague, Max Pardue, to share some of the key findings. So why this study? So this study was conducted in partnership with the Indiana Commission for Higher Education and the Indiana Department of Education. So leaders at these agencies, like those in many other states, were concerned about teacher shortages in the state schools, especially given the declines in enrollment in the state's teacher prep programs in the last decade. They are committed to better understand and addressing issues within the state's teacher pipeline. They wanted to know the characteristics of students who entered teacher preparation and how the students were progressing in the pipeline. They were also interested in a better understanding of factors that might be related to the completion of a degree in education. So we conduct this study, which focused on 3 cohorts of undergraduate education students. So these are students who first enrolled in Indiana's public colleges and universities between 2010-11 and 2012 and 13, and who at any point in their college years enrolled in an education degree program. So we track the students longitudinally. We examine their degree completion, their attainment of licensures within Indiana, their employment, as well as their retention within Indiana public schools. So we used a combination of public available data as well as administered data obtained from the Indiana Department of Education and the Indiana Commission for Higher Education. So from the Indiana Department of Education, we obtained data on students' high school records, and then teacher employment and evaluation data, as well as teacher licensure data. And then from the commission, we obtained like college enrollment and degree records. And we also got public available data on characteristic of teacher preparation programs, as well as Indiana's public colleges and universities. So we, like I said, we tracked 3 cohorts of students up to 2017-18 for their like college post-secondary enrollment and certification, and up to 2018-19 for their employment. So we described who they were, what were their characteristics, and then the extent to which they reached each of the milestones in the teacher pipeline, like including enrollment, when do they enroll in an education program, what percentage completed a degree in education, what percentage attained an initial instructional license in Indiana, and then who entered teaching in Indiana, and to what extent they were retained within the states, and their performance on their teacher evaluation. We also conducted regression analysis to examine the relationships between completing a bachelor's degree in education and the students' characteristics, as well as a characteristics of their first college. So I will now turn this over to Max, who will highlight some of the key findings from this study.
Thanks, Inmay. Yeah, so I'll be highlighting just some of the findings here. You can find the full set of findings in the report. But the first thing that we wanted to do was just to describe the pipeline by the numbers. So we looked at each major milestone, as Inmay mentioned, starting with undergraduate students entering an education program, moving on to earning a bachelor's degree in education, earning an instructional license, and then entering the classroom in an Indiana public school, and then remaining teaching for a second year. So each bar here shows the number of students, with arrows showing the percent who complete the next milestone and shaded regions showing attrition from the previous milestone. So we can see in those first 2 bars that around 11,000 students pursued a bachelor's degree in education between the 2010-11 and 2012-13 school years, and that 41%, or about 4,500 of those students, earned a bachelor's degree in education by 2017-18. We also see that of that initial pool of a little over 11,000 students, only about 1,700 actually entered teaching in an Indiana public school. So we also, as Inmay mentioned, described the group of students at each milestone in order to see how its composition changed over time. And we found that diversity decreased in later stages of the teacher pipeline. So for example, 12.1% of the students who entered an undergraduate education program identified as a racial or ethnic minority, but only 6.3% of those who completed an education program and earned an instructional license did the same. You can see the same pattern here in relationship to eligibility for the National School Lunch Program, which we use as an indicator of a student's economic background. So from there, we used regression analysis in order to explore the relationship between a number of individual and institutional factors and the time it took for students to complete a bachelor's degree in education. The factors we looked at included year of enrollment in education programs, student demographics and background, high school academic preparation, performance, and financial aid in college, and characteristics for the first college in which a student enrolled. This slide and the next show median time to completion of a degree, which is the estimated time at which half of the group completed a bachelor's degree in education. We found that students who enrolled in an education program in their third year of college or later had a lower probability of completing an education degree and a longer median time to completion than students who entered the program in their first year of college. So similarly, we found that students who started at a 2-year college and then transferred to a 4-year college had a higher probability of completing a bachelor's degree in education and a shorter median time to completion than students who started at a 4-year college. We also looked at how receiving financial aid either in the first year of college or in any year after the first year was related to completion of a bachelor's degree in education. So this table shows those relationships for any financial aid and then specifically for the Pell Grant and for Indiana's 21st Century Scholarship, which is an Indiana scholarship program that provides financial grants and supports for up to 4 years at an Indiana college or university and requires students to enroll in grades 7 or 8 and meet academic expectations in high school and college to maintain their scholarship. So downward red arrows here indicate a negative association with degree completion, while upward green arrows indicate a positive association with degree completion. So we can see that students who receive the 21st Century Scholarship in their first year of college or any financial aid after their first year of college were more likely to complete a bachelor's degree in education, while Pell Grant recipients were less likely to complete their degree. So I can pass it back now to Yinmei to discuss the key takeaways of some of these findings.
Thanks, Max. So Max highlights some of the key findings. There are more findings and more detailed findings in the report as well in the report appendix. So the findings we just highlighted suggest a few areas where education leaders in Indiana could focus their efforts to address the leaks in the pipeline. First, prioritize strategies that increase diversity in teacher pipelines. So the decreasing diversity we found along the pipeline is concerning, particularly given an ever-diversifying student body in Indiana. Second, to increase financial aid to students from low-income backgrounds beyond what Pell Grant offered and beyond the first year of college, and at the same time expand other support resources to them, such as college readiness support offered by the 21st Century Scholarship. Third, colleges might want to encourage students to enroll in an education program early in their college years. So colleges can support students early in their decision making about majors and advise them to how to balance their content area coursework with their education coursework. Finally, state and teacher education leaders could enhance policies and practice that encourage qualified students to transfer from 2-year to 4-year colleges and to enter education programs. So Indiana has created transfer single articulation pathways in 20 programs as of fall 2020, including a few in education like early childhood education, elementary education, special education, and secondary science subjects. So students completing these pathways can transfer all 60 credits into a bachelor's program at a 4-year college. So the finding from this study can support the state's ongoing efforts to provide a smooth, predictable pathway for students in 2-year colleges from an associate degree to a bachelor's degree in education. Like I said, the report has just been published on the AUF website, so you can download the report and the report appendix. I hope you'll get a chance to read that. We also developed a one-pager snapshot report, 4-page briefs, as well as infographics to highlight some of the key findings. And our engagement team also had a blog post highlighting some of the key findings. So Max and I have, here's our contact information, and we are happy to answer any questions you have for the study.
Thank you, Max and Yunmei. So we're going to pause and see if anyone has questions for our research team. And I've been monitoring the chat box, so I know there's quite a few that have come in. So let me just ask a few here. Okay. So there was a question that came in that asked if for the sort of the pipeline, as you guys showed it, if you have the statistics for how many white students progress through the pipeline, or maybe rephrasing, do we know the percentage of white students that stayed in comparison?
We didn't like describe the percentage by subgroups, but in our regression analysis, we do conduct analysis analyzing whether students of different subgroups have different probability of completing degree. So we found that white students had the shortest time to, or the highest probability of completing the degree, but that's not statistically significantly different from Black or Hispanic students. But we do find that students from other groups, other race and ethnicities, like other than Black, Hispanic, and white, do take longer and to complete the degree and have a lower probability of completing the degree.
Thank you. Is there any way to tell how many students started teaching in the state that is outside of Indiana?
Unfortunately, no, for this, largely due to like data limitations. We simply don't have data outside of like Indiana.
Excellent. All right, for the low income variable, did you use free and reduced lunch price from K-12, even if students enrolled after their first year of college?
The percentage, the eligibility for free reduced price lunch refers to their status while in high school. And after enrollment, we use the Pell Grant, whether students is a Pell Grant recipient or not.
Excellent, thank you. Did part of the study include asking non-white educators why they did stay in the profession, or is that beyond the scope?
We didn't. That's a type of follow-up study that we are hoping that this study will provide to like other investigators to look at.
Excellent. Did you see any difference in the pipeline for different certification areas?
We don't examine the differences by subject areas.
Excellent. Okay. Are there any other last questions? Okay, so I don't see any. So thank you so much for answering the group's questions. We're now going to turn it over to Scott and Rebecca to share reflections from the Indiana Department of Education.
Thank you. The Indiana Department of Education is dedicated to fostering both student and adult learner interest in teaching and doing what we can to remove any unnecessary barriers to those seeking to enter the teaching profession. And as we know, many see teaching as their calling, so to speak, and we certainly as a department and as a state do not want to place unnecessary barriers which would extinguish their passion for serving our P12 or even our P16 students. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to provide a few thoughts or reflections concerning this study. Before starting, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank those from REL and also from the Indiana Commission for Higher Education for the opportunity to participate in a few meetings during which we were able to provide additional input before this report was finalized, and some of that input was with regard to teacher preparation and teacher shortages, as well as an opportunity to analyze some of our existing data from both the state and federal level, including Title II. Well, looking at the information on the slide, the information is indeed disappointing, but it does reflect the urgency of the situation, and it confirms our impression of the teacher preparation pipeline at the pre and post institutional level. And as often, studies like this often answer questions, they also create new questions, but those new questions can help drive our work in the next few months and few years. And so as we work and develop our upcoming plans as a department in collaboration with others, a few key questions that I would like to identify that have sprung from the slide, so to speak, include the following. What are the key factors causing or driving students to change degree majors or pathways between college admission and completion? What can both policymakers and educator prep providers do in partnership to help stem this drop? And while providers have a key role in teacher recruitment, as we all know, it should be a shared work and effort, and we want to provide support for them in increasing the pipeline. Are there existing licensure pathways that could be revised or perhaps streamlined to ensure more candidates are able to get licensed and embark upon a career in teaching? What support mechanisms can we develop, fund, or implement for teachers during their first and second year of teaching? And what is the role of the educator preparation provider in supporting completers during their first and second year of teaching? And finally, how can policymakers help ensure programs have the capacity to provide support that can enhance locally developed mentoring and intervention strategies for teachers who are struggling, in particular during their first and second year of teaching? And therefore, why are some leaving the profession? Are we seeking feedback from those who do leave the profession, and are we seeking their feedback to address the reasons why they have left the profession? So overall, we want to turn what looks like a negative and is in many respects a negative into opportunities for change and for hope. I believe Rebecca will now talk about some of our current strategies.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, as a department, we've been collaborating with other state agencies and entities with a vested interest in Indiana's workforce, especially related to the recruitment and retention of educators. We know that connecting our P-12 schools with ed prep programs early on in a student's pathway is one essential strategy to developing and diversifying the future ed pipeline. We currently have a pilot 1-2-1 Grow Your Own partnership with 2 districts that you'll hear more about later, and have worked to connect many others as they develop methods for early identification of future educators and pathways into the field of education that include high school transfer of credits, ongoing connection and mentorship, and paid teacher residencies. The Governor's Next Level Teacher Compensation Commission also generated a report with recommendations for how to achieve competitive teacher compensation in Indiana, and there were action items already in the latest session to address minimum pay and provide support for schools on increasing fiscal efficiency. So we know that there are data points that give us a lot of great information and can help drive next steps, but we're also looking for the pieces of data that are needed to fill in some of the gaps that tell the whole story of Indiana teacher pipeline. That's indicative of the chat questions that are coming through right now. For instance, our collaboration with the Department of Workforce Development has us looking for ways to engage professionals in transition programs and in ways that schools can capitalize on their industry experience as another means to address shortage areas, but also to identify trends in workforce as a whole because professionals in various industries are facing similar concerns with workforce. In addition, Scott's team specifically works with Indiana's ed prep programs as they work to create recruitment plans focused on increasing the diversity of our ed pipeline. Scott, would you like to jump in and share a little more on that?
Yes, please. Yes, thank you. The Indiana Department of Education requires all ed prep programs or providers to seek and attain national accreditation via the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation, or CAPE, as we often refer to it as. And providers must demonstrate that they have aligned their program to a variety of standards for both initial and advanced level programs. But in particular, one is focused, and that is standard 3, is focused on developing a plan or for recruiting diverse candidates who meet local and state employment needs. And just to quickly recap what that says, it says that the provider presents plans and goals to recruit and support completion of high quality candidates from a broad range of backgrounds and diverse populations to accomplish their mission. The admitted pool of candidates reflects the diversity of America's P-12 students, and that providers demonstrate efforts to know and address community, state, national, regional, or local needs for hard-to-staff schools and shortage fields, particularly as it is now in STEM, English language learning, and students with disabilities. And that is all incorporated within Standard 3.1 of CAPE. But as we know, just because something is written in a plan, it doesn't mean that it's always as effective as it can be or should be. So as a department, we want to ensure that not only our providers are developing plans that are specific to educator preparation providers and schools, but that they have the support and resources they need to develop an effective recruitment plan. So this year we will be reviewing some of our existing plans across the state, as well as plans that have been successful in increasing the number of students, and importantly, the number who remain in the program and complete the program. And we hope to showcase a few exemplary plans, which are also data proven to be effective, and share with others in the state, with their permission, of course, showing how they have had an effective and data-driven effective plan for teacher recruitment, in particular for diverse candidates.
Good, thanks, Scott. In addition to the work being done with our ed prep programs, as a state, we've also supported schools in the creation of career ladders initiatives to focus on opportunities for educators to maintain teaching roles while also increasing their leadership influence, which is a great way to retain high quality teachers in the classroom. As I mentioned earlier, state agencies are collaborating to support all Indiana teachers and students. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our friends of the Commission for Higher Education and their commitment to these efforts as well, through several efforts, including the implementation of the Next Generation Educator Grant and teacher residency grants that were recently supported. These are just a few of the strategies in place to support the recruitment, retention, and increased diversity of educators in Indiana. We'll continue to use the data to drive the work that we do and look forward to feedback and ideas for solutions, as we hopefully are all working towards the same goal of providing the best opportunities for Indiana's kids. Both Scott and I's contact information is listed on the next slide, and we would encourage you to reach out with questions or if you just have great ideas.
And we appreciate both. Thank you.
Go, Scott. It's okay. Okay, Scott and Rebecca, thank you for sharing IDOE's reflections and strategies to support a strong teacher pipeline. Now we're going to share some highlights from the Michigan Department of Education and the Indiana Teacher Preparation Programs at Purdue University and Indiana University Kokomo. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Levan.
Thanks, Billy. My name is Sarah Levan, and I work at the Michigan Department of Education in the Office of the Educator Excellence, which is Michigan's Educator Workforce Ecosystem Office. At the department, we draw on a theory of action that acknowledges the essentiality of diverse educator workforce and the importance of addressing barriers to recruiting and retaining educators. At the center of our efforts is the goal to increase the number of certified teachers in areas of shortage and also grow and diversify our workforce. In the next two slides, I'll share a few of our recent efforts around this goal. They are, some of them are in the beginning stages and some are midstream. So we don't have a lot of results right now. Next slide. The first initiative falls under our Future Proud Michigan Educator campaign, otherwise known as FPME. And this has the goal of expanding access to programming and reducing barriers for future educators. So those who are not quite in the pipeline yet, they span, as you can see on the right, students in grades 6 through 12, all the way through educators who are currently working in other states and who are interested in becoming certified in Michigan. I'd like to focus on our newest initiative or effort. It's called the Explore program, and it's located in the first category in the students in grades 6 through 12. The Explore program is brand new. It's programming aimed at pre-collegiate students to explore teaching as a potential career. The intent is to reduce barriers to higher education and educator preparation, as well as support schools with context-specific or what we say is grow your own approaches to teacher recruitment. And then by default, it's also to promote positive messaging about the teaching profession, because as students go through these programs and teachers teach in these programs, they have positive feelings and then they share them with the community. You're probably wondering why create another type of middle or high school recruitment or grow your own program, especially since most states have a successful history of offering career and technical ed programs. Well, we found that not all students have access in Michigan to CTE programs, and that CTE programs require a significant commitment from schools and students and create some barriers that are unintended barriers. So in creating the Explore programs, we set out to reduce as many barriers as possible. Some include, we offset all development costs for curriculum by providing free curricular resources, scope and sequence, learning objectives. We're providing free professional learning for mentor teachers, a $10,000 planning grant for school districts to design the program and recruit students. We've tried to reduce the barrier for that comes along with course design. And so we're designing flexible course opportunities, such as flipped staffing and delivery models, virtual models, and out of school time models that don't rely on traditional staffing, because we found that was one barrier for schools to implement these kinds of programs. We were thinking about how do we reach more students, especially those from historically marginalized backgrounds. And so we focused the curriculum around topics of identity, equity, and college access, and also encouraged LEAs, or local education agencies, to tailor the program to their locale and their learning needs. And so the curriculum is not only aligned to what they need, it's also aligned to the Michigan Teacher Preparation Program requirements. And our hope is that it'll allow students to more easily transition to educator preparation and do it earlier, instead of waiting till their freshman or sophomore year. And then the last barrier we were trying to overcome is providing staffing guidance to the school, because we know that the instructor matters as much as the actual program, and that recruitment is about who's recruiting into the profession as much as it is what they're recruiting into. I do want to acknowledge that we were lucky to be able to use the resources that Washington State provided. They had lots of research and data and materials as a foundation for this work, and they shared them openly, and we benefited greatly. Next slide. The next three efforts lie within our workforce diversity, recruitment, and retention efforts. These are all at the beginning stages as well. They have the goal of engaging and valuing professional expertise, cultural assets, and perspectives of diverse educators. The first one is a diverse educator workforce advisory group. This advisory group is going to help the department examine and make recommendations about policies, procedures, and processes to reduce barriers to recruitment and retention of diverse educators, especially those in those most underrepresented in the classroom. The group is supported by a handful of national partners, Robert Simmons from American University, Sharif El-Mekki from the Center for Black Educator Development. And as I said, they're just starting. This week, they're meeting for the second time, and they'll divide into topic-specific work groups. Some of those work groups will be around mentoring policies for educators of color and recruitment strategies at the state level for educators of color. The second effort is to establish and professionally develop a cohort of ambassadors to help us recruit into the profession. The idea behind this one is that individuals come from a wide variety of communities, and they are best positioned to go and recruit and help positively promote others into the profession. And so our hope with this one is to provide professional development and growth opportunities for individuals so they can then advocate for and recruit into the profession. And the last one is to establish professional communities of practice for educators of color and from historically marginalized backgrounds. And this one's important because we know we can recruit and recruit and recruit, but if people are leaving because they don't feel connected, then that's a problem. They're going to continue to leave. And so the goal of this effort is to provide resources and supports for schools and districts to then in turn support diverse educators' sense of belonging and inclusion. And again, this one's in the beginning stages. We are starting with a planning grant to school districts to help us develop these resources and pilot the supports. And I'd like to now turn this over to Kathy Obenchain, who's Associate Dean and Professor at Purdue.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. And thank you to REL Midwest for inviting me to participate in this webinar. So Purdue College of Education has been and is currently undergoing a major transformation of our undergraduate teacher education program. And looking at all of our individual licensure programs. But this morning or this afternoon, I want to focus very specifically on one element of that, and that is our work and partnership in Grow Your Own initiatives. So our objectives for the Grow Your Own were to find a way to reduce the cost of higher education through some creative ways of reducing housing costs at the beginning and the end of the program, perhaps reducing some tuition costs, and finding a way to offer some paid residencies. We also want to encourage youth to invest in and stay in their communities. So, we have a number of rural communities in Indiana, and a lot of young people if they go to college, when they go to college, they find it really difficult to come home again and find a professional career. So we wanted to create the space that lets them know that the community is investing with them and investing in them. This is also consistent with the strategic goals of the Indiana Commission for Higher Education, often called ICHE. And our Grow Your Own programs that I'm going to be talking about today are ones that are funded through the Indiana Department of Education, and Rebecca had mentioned that as well. Next slide, please. So these are our partners for our particular Grow Your Own program. And I want to say definitely thank you to the Indiana Department of Education who approached us at Purdue University about our interest in, they knew that we were going through a curricular transformation and approached us to see if what we were doing already might fit with their goals. And so we're calling ours a one-to-one partnership. So we have so Purdue and the IDOE are two main partners. Then we have two school districts that we're working with. And these school districts are relatively indicative of Indiana. Whitley County is a small rural school district in the northeast corner of the state. And Lawrence Township is is a more urban school district right outside of Indianapolis. So we are very specifically trying to reach out to school districts that have a challenge in staffing, whether it's high need areas like ELL, special education, and the STEM areas, but in general that are hard to recruit teachers to and then to keep teachers embedded in their communities. This is also an opportunity to diversify the teacher workforce. Lawrence Township has a larger population of students of color than Whitley County, but Whitley County as a rural school district has some elements of diversity too, one being that it is rural, and that's a very different mindset. Next slide, please. So the 1-to-1 structure, so if you think of a 4-year college degree, the 1-to-1 adds up to 4 years, 1 + 2 + 1. So that's the way to think about this particular Grow Your Own project that we're working on. So year 1 doesn't actually, it's year 1 of college. So it may not actually be all done in the senior year of high school. But while still in high school, likely over the junior and senior year, students who are in the 1-to-1 program will earn about 1 year's worth of credits they would need towards their teacher licensure program. Right now, we're just focused on elementary and special education. Provided, depending upon how this pilot goes, we would like to expand. It just becomes a little more complex. But again, special education is definitely a shortage area. But there's a combination of ways that students can meet this year 1. It could be dual credit courses, the CLEP program, college level examination program, or advanced placement program and courses, and online classes. So what we have found so far is there's no one way. We can't do it just with dual credit, and we can't do it just with AP exams, that there needs to be a variety of ways for us to create opportunities for students. And I need to speed up. It's approximately 30 credits. It also, and this is an important point, includes what we call early start, and that would be between years 1 and 2, that these participants or these students would come to Purdue for about 5 weeks in the summer to get acclimated to campus, to begin to meet their peers, and to take Purdue courses online. Years 2 and 3 are traditional on campus with everyone else. If you could go on to the next slide. Year 4 is a year-long residency back in a student's home community. We are hoping to adopt and use an adaptation of what Arizona State uses called the 3-2-1. And you can see what that includes is 3 residents, 2 classrooms, and 1 mentor teacher. What that requires is that there is an unfilled teaching position, and the salary for that unfilled teaching position gets split 4 ways. 3/4 of it go to the resident interns, and 1/4 goes to the mentor teacher for their added responsibilities. Next slide, please. And that is, there is my contact information. And I thank you for your time. And I'm going to pass it off to Leah for my UK.
All right, thank you, Kathy, and good afternoon. I'm Leah Nellis. I serve as the Dean of the School of Education at IU Kokomo, and I'd like to thank the REL Midwest team for inviting me to be part of this very important webinar. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Just to set a little bit of context, I want to share some information about IU Kokomo. So we are one of 5 regional campuses of the Indiana University. We serve a 12-county area in north central Indiana. Enrolling approximately 3,300 students, our campus mission is focused on student success and the economic and cultural vitality of our particular region. One hallmark of an IU Kokomo education in general is experiential learning made possible through deep partnerships with campus and community members. In the School of Education, this is most clearly visible through our Center for Educational Partnership, or what we call the CEP, which is a formal network of 35 member school districts in our region that work alongside the School of Education faculty and staff to prepare educators and education professionals for our schools and our communities. These districts serve in an advisory role for the School of Education. They host our field placements, which begin with early clinicals during the freshman year and continue all the way up through student teaching, including a funded teacher residency program that we've heard both Scott and Rebecca refer to. These school districts also serve as partners for us in various grants and project initiatives, one of which I'm really going to focus on today as I talk about one of our Grow Your Own programs. So we serve primarily rural communities. So our recruitment efforts have centered on Grow Your Own initiatives, as well as interdisciplinary and collaborative opportunities to focus on the particular shortage areas in our communities and in our districts. Given that particular focus, then we've collaborated with districts to identify their focus. And the one I'm going to share with you today is a high school grow your own program. We also have other grow your own initiatives that focus on alternative pathways. And I apologize. We also have other grow your own pathways that are alternative in nature, but we're going to go ahead and skip to the next slide. And I'll share a little bit about our high school grow your own program. So it was initially supported through internal grant funding, and the program was co-developed with 4 of our school district partners: IU Kokomo administrators, School of Education leadership, faculty, and students, as well as school district personnel, including superintendents, curriculum directors, high school administrators, teachers, and counselors, all came together to co-create this program. That group co-created the overall structure, the requirements, and even the title, which you can see is Tomorrow's Teachers Growing Our Own. Districts provide leadership for recruiting and mentoring their participating high school students, and they've done that in a very targeted and focused way. Some districts have focused on encouraging students from traditionally underrepresented groups to participate in the program, with hopes that these individuals will one day return to the district for employment. So part of this was about encouraging underrepresented groups into the teaching profession, but it was also through a realization that many of their potential educators were sitting in the seats of their high school classrooms, and they really wanted to encourage and support students into the teaching pipeline so that they could stay in those communities, as opposed to trying to recruit individuals once they had graduated with an education degree into their communities where they likely would not stay for any particular length of time. So the program was initially designed in an intentional way with sufficient flexibility so that all of the districts could customize it to meet their own particular needs. So the 4 original school districts, one is a very small rural with enrollment just shy of 700. One of the other school districts that's been participating has an enrollment of about 6,000. So they obviously needed to implement the Tomorrow's Teachers program in very different ways in their district. So we partnered with them to ensure that that was possible. We are entering our 4th year of implementation, which we are very proud of, and it's been quite successful and very positive, and I'll share a little bit of data to that effect in a moment. We, of course, continue to revise and improve the program. We revise to remain in alignment with state high school graduation and CTE requirements, and to provide an optimal student experience. We are collecting data on teacher self-efficacy across the program and into students' enrollment at IU Kokomo, because we know teacher self-efficacy supports long-term retention both in an education program and post-graduation in employment. We are, of course, also monitoring enrollment in our programs, and we continue to expand the Tomorrow's Teachers program, and we are planning for the 2021-22 academic year. We will be implementing in 6 school districts. We are also working with each participating school district to develop district-specific programs of studies to show how their students can start with the Tomorrow's Teachers program, and with strategic selection of other dual credit and AP course selection, can then use that to matriculate onto IU Kokomo to complete their program in their degree in a very time-efficient and cost-effective manner. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'll share just a little bit about the program. It is designed for high school juniors and seniors who are interested in the education profession. We refer to it as containing 3 main components. The first are education foundation courses that are taken 1 per semester across the junior and senior years of high school. Those courses are taught by IU Kokomo School of Education faculty through a blend of in-person classes that meet in the high schools, as well as synchronous and asynchronous online. There is a high school teacher who serves as a facilitator and a liaison for the purposes of the program. Participating students also complete course requirements and assignments in grade P through 8 classrooms in their home district. Those placements are coordinated and overseen by the high school facilitator, and they align to the course objectives. Students also participate in several on-campus opportunities where all of the students from all 4 or now 6 school districts who are involved in the program come together for combined class meetings and for on-campus events multiple times each semester. And we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So with enrollments between 250, 275, we are considered a small EPP. However, through various collaborations, we're able to offer multiple licensure and degree programs and leverage our resources to be responsive to school district needs. You can see our enrollment over the past 4 years has increased overall, especially at the fall semester. And we've also observed an increase in the number of students of color, particularly Latino students, which we can track back to the intentional recruitment of students by some of our school districts who participate in the Tomorrow's Teachers program. We certainly realize that this data is relatively short when we're looking at a few years here, but we certainly see it as a promising trend, both for the pipeline. We are also, as you might expect, also increasing our focus on really intentional retention efforts, both during the program and after graduation. So for example, we will launch for the first time this summer an educator wellness retreat that will be in conjunction with a new mentoring program that we are starting, where both current students and recent graduates will be paired with a local educator who will serve as a mentor and a support to them during their initial years in employment. So I think I'm in under time, and we're going to go to the next slide, which gives you my contact information. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, or if you have good examples of how you are making this work in your homes, in your communities, I would love to hear those as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now we're going to transition to the panel discussion. Dr. Levan, Dr. Obenchain, Dr. Wan, and Mr. Bogan will join us for the panel, so I'll give them just a moment. All right, so I'm going to start with questions for Dr. Obenchain and Dr. Nellis. So your university Grow Your Own programs begin with high school students taking college level coursework while still in high school. How do you reach high school students and encourage them to apply for the program?
Well, I can talk a little bit. We're just getting started with the pilot, 1-to-1 pilot with Purdue. The main way that we're starting that is outreach through the schools themselves, talking with and meeting with the counselors that are going to, and school administrators who are going to work with those students. We've certainly offered and will absolutely show up and talk to any class of students or any set of parents. But that is, because ours is a very clear partnership with school districts, it has to start with the teachers and counselors in those schools.
Yeah, and I would agree with Kathy, because ours is a partnership as well, obviously, with school districts. So the way that looks across the districts that are part of our Tomorrow's Teachers program, it varies based on those particular districts, how they're structured, how they do career readiness, career awareness kinds of things. So the high school facilitator that I mentioned works very intentionally with their high school guidance counselor staff to coordinate those efforts and use whatever process they have within their districts. We also have done a variety of things where I've gone a number of times and talked to an entire sophomore class, because that's the group that districts are recruiting from. We've also been intentional about showing how the Tomorrow's Teachers program can line up to what districts are already doing in terms of a cadet program that may be happening during the sophomore year. So we're definitely partnering with those districts. And then one of the things we have learned that I think is really important that we did more of it this year, and then we'll do more this coming year as well, is communication to parents to help them understand both the benefit but also the importance of these classes, because they are college courses, right? They are going to stay on a transcript. They are going to impact the GPA. So we are also increasing the parent communication side of it as well. The other thing, just quickly, that I would say that the districts have been intentional about identifying teachers in their districts who can serve as very positive and encouraging role models. And the teachers that host the students who go out into the classrooms for the field experience piece have really helped start to recruit and kind of talk up and encourage students as well. So that's how we're doing it currently. Good question.
Thank you. And then likewise, a little bit about the school districts. How do you work with them to be sure that you're effectively preparing teachers to meet their needs?
We'll go first on this one, and then Kathy can jump in. For us, I think it was the way we started. So we co-developed. So there were a couple things that I knew we would need to hold to related to which courses would likely be part of the program, but then they helped us design the hands-on field experience piece of it. They helped us make sure that the way we were going to do this just fit with their district philosophy and what they were comfortable with high school students doing and going to do things, with other college students, for example. So I think for us, it was about engaging them at the very beginning of the process. Really, they helped kind of come up with the idea and help support my application for some internal funding. And then we have continued to meet with that same planning group at least 3 times each year to just plan and revise and step back and make sure that it is meeting their needs. And we adjust as we need to. So we're responsive in a way that I think they really appreciate and help meets their needs.
I think I agree with Leah. The partnership with the individual school districts is key. What we've done, we have some dual credit courses, but we're also tapping into dual credit courses where students actually earn dual credit with a university other than Purdue. And those we have some state guidelines on what needs to be incorporated in that. So we're following those, but it is very individualized. Our pilot is working with 2 different school districts, and we're having to actually work out and talk through different scenarios and different courses and different sets of experiences that work differently for different school districts. I think that's also a bit of a it's wonderful in the sense that it has to be really specific to each school district because each school district has different needs. I think it can be challenging because universities aren't always quite as nimble as we would like them to be. So there is a constant navigation of what can we do, what can we not do, and how do we find our way around or through this particular hiccup.
Excellent, thank you. For Dr. Levan, so you mentioned several resources for recruiting and supporting diverse teachers in Michigan, including the advisory group and the Ambassador and Partners program, as well as the communities of practice. How does MDE promote these opportunities so educators are aware of them?
That's a great question. We don't do it as much as we probably could or should. We have a number of formal and informal means. So we have formal channels like memos and press releases. We have more informal means, such as directly emailing teachers, administrators, other educators. We do publish a newsletter monthly. We share things like this in the newsletter. We are lucky to have some funding, so we have some consultants working or contractors working on this work, and they host webinars and information sessions with districts and individuals who are interested. And then most recently, we've gotten into the social media market and have a number of channels that way, and we found that's really positive. But we're always looking for more outreach, and if anyone has any information of what works, we'd love to hear it.
Excellent, thanks. For Mr. Bogan, how does the IDOE collaborate with the Indiana Commission of Higher Education to recruit, prepare, and employ effective teachers? I know you mentioned several times that collaboration is key.
Yes, it is. Collaboration is key. And I want to give a shout out to Dr. Ken Sauer from the commission and his colleagues at the commission, because they have been very proactive in reaching out to us, to those of us here at the department, on not only this contributing to this report and the information that the report required from our end, but also in how we can work more collaboratively in the future. He and his team have been enhancing and working with their partnership with Credential Engine. And Credential Engine is through what's called Credential Registry, is a cloud-based library with information on all types of credentials. And so we've been able to provide some licensing information, approved program information, options that individuals who are examining colleges across Indiana, or maybe career changers who are looking at options across the state, can more easily get this information through Credential Engine. So it's this interaction between our agencies is something we want to explore and continue to strengthen as time moves on, so that we're not, I mean, we all have shared goals, but sometimes in the past we've probably worked not together as much as we could have, because we all have the same goals, but the more that we can share and work together, the better. I'm also, from a department standpoint, we're asking for commission or someone from the commission or who can represent the commission to serve on our new program review committee. The department is responsible for reviewing all new program proposals or teacher prep program proposals that institutions would like to offer in Indiana. And we would like to involve them in that review process and then get more of their feedback on that, so that we can target and share areas that are specific to recruitment and work more collaboratively in promoting these new programs across the state. So I think there are a lot of exciting things coming up, and we've had a great working relationship in the past, and I'm looking forward to finding new ways for us to work together through an even stronger, more active and proactive partnership with the commission.
Thanks, Scott. This next question is for Dr. Wan. What do we know about the national average of completion rates for teacher prep programs and how they compare to Indiana's rates?
I don't really know. There is a kind of a authoritative figure on the national completion rate. Mia or Catherine, maybe you have an idea, but it's a tricky thing. I don't think anybody like, there's various ways to report the completion rate. So the we for this study, we look at it's a little bit probably different from most teacher prep programs would report. So we look at anybody who ever enrolled in a 4-year program, and then from those pool, what percentage. So our like number is around 41%, and then there were, like, I would say there were additional 23% who complete a bachelor degree but not in education. So so the other, but I don't know of a national like figure for teacher prep program completion rate.
Yeah, I would agree with Yin-Mei. Just because teacher preparation differs so much by institution and by state. We at Purdue, some of our students earn bachelor's degrees in education. Some of them, we have one program where they actually earn a bachelor's degree in English with a concentration in English education. So that may not show up as an education degree, even though it is someone entering the teaching profession. So I think it's very hard to pin that down, and I also don't know of any national database that pulls all of those data together.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Owenchain, this one is for you. Is there a cost for the credits taken at the high school level? And if so, who pays for it?
Well, luckily, because of our partnership with IDOE, the 2 school districts that I referred to in our pilot, Whitley County and Lawrence Township, actually are using part of the grant funds to pay for the college credits earned. And I believe any of those college credits earned through advanced placement, I believe the schools are building that in. the same thing with dual credit, and the same thing with summer start. That's a really important topic that we have to examine long-term in terms of sustainability, because is the school district, is the institution, is the Department of Education going to make this a recurring funding opportunity? And if we expand it, how are we going to continue to do it? For those courses met through the CLEP exam, those are free. So there is no other cost for those, but AP exams cost and Purdue courses cost, whether it's an online course or whether it's through dual credit.
Thank you. All right, I have another question for Dr. Wan. So from the study findings, were you able to glean any insights about how the intersectionality was associated with degree completion or licensure? So for example, what does the data say about students who are of color and eligible for free and reduced lunch? Are there any takeaways that might be helpful for states or teacher prep programs to support students' intersectionalities?
So the way we conducted our analysis, we didn't look at the interaction of like different factors. The way we build the model is we want to actually to tell the unique contribution of each factor to the probability of completing. So the way we interpret the finding is whether, for example, male students are less likely to complete a degree than female students while holding all other else equal. So we found there are more findings in the report. For example, the students eligible for the National School Lunch Program were less likely, right, to complete, and students in special education were less likely to compete, and the Pell Grant recipients are less likely to complete a degree in education. And then their first year college characteristic also matters, like students who were enrolled in smaller colleges or in college with a higher concentration of Pell Grant recipients were less likely. So there is reason to think that students who would be at a higher risk of not completing if they fall into multiple of this characteristics. I think those would be what we call probably high at risk students.
Oh, I haven't muted myself. Okay, I have one last question before we sort of close out. This is for Dr. Nellis. So from the enrollment trend graph, there was a large increase in the overall program enrollment in fall 2020, particularly among Hispanic or Latino students. You had mentioned that this was probably due to work with the high school to specifically recruit students. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what were some of the efforts underway at the school?
Yeah, and it's certainly that increase was not exclusively due to the Tomorrow's Teachers program, but we certainly know that some of that particular subgroup's enrollment did matriculate to us through a Tomorrow's Teachers program in one of our districts. So one of the district partners has a high Latino population, and when we started the program, they intentionally wanted to focus their recruitment efforts in that direction for a couple of reasons. One, because of having teachers of color that were representative of their community in their classrooms, but the district had also started a dual language program, and they knew they were very soon going to run out of staff who held the credentials and the expertise to teach in that particular program. So I would estimate, I don't have the data off the top of my head, but I would estimate of each cohort that they've had enter the Tomorrow's Teachers program, they've probably been 40 to 50% of those have been Latino students, and a number of them have been matriculated onto us at IU Kokomo and are current students.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so as we wrap up, we want to encourage everyone to take a short feedback survey. Your feedback helps us to plan relevant and engaging events in the future. The link will be shared with you in the chat box, but it'll also pop up automatically when you exit the webinar. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter and sign up for our newsletter for more updates. Our Twitter link and newsletter link will be in the chat box. If you would like a certificate of participation for today's webinar, please email Cora Goldston at cgoldston@air.org. We want to thank all of our presenters. Without you, we would not be here today. And we want to thank all of our participants for joining us. We hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you so much.